Your family deserves to lose everything.
I mean, that's courage. You think your character's brave?
What if the very first episode of YMarshals doesn't open with action, but with heartbreak? The kind of heartbreak that shatters Casey Dutton's world forever. Imagine the show beginning not with a gunfight or a chase, but with the sound of silence, the silence of Monica's funeral. From that single moment, everything changes. Casey Dutton has always been the quiet fighter of the Yellowstone universe. A man who wanted nothing more than peace for his family, a ranch to protect, and a son to raise away from chaos. But if YMarshals is going to deliver the drama we've been promised, then peace is the one thing Casey will never have again. The rumors are everywhere. Monica's fate is uncertain, her future in the show is hanging by a thread, and the producers have given fans just enough hints to keep everyone on edge. The shocking possibility? Monica's death may be the very reason Casey leaves behind the ranch and walks into a darker, more dangerous world. Think about it. Monica has always been Casey's anchor. She's the one person who pulled him away from the constant violence that surrounds the Dutton family. Without her, what's left for him? In the opening episode, we may see the funeral that rips his world apart. Casey standing beside Tate, his young son, both broken in ways they can't even begin to understand. Friends, family, and enemies alike will gather around them, but none of their support will erase the fact that Casey has lost the most important person in his life. And in that moment, grief will harden into something else: revenge. The trailers have already teased Casey's line, "I'm changing my path, trying to find a new beginning." But what if that new beginning isn't about hope at all, but about blood? What if Casey's journey into the U.S. Marshals isn't just a career move, but a vendetta, a way to hunt down the people responsible for destroying his family? If Monica's killers exist, they won't be small-time criminals. They'll have to be ruthless, powerful, and dangerous enough to threaten even Casey. Which means YMarshals could be setting us up for the deadliest villains we've ever seen in the Yellowstone universe, and Casey won't be facing them alone. For the first time, he'll have an entire unit at his side. Ariel Cabell as Belle, Ash Santos as Andrea, and Brett Cullen as Herrig Ford, the head of the U.S. Marshals, are all names tied to this new chapter. These aren't familiar faces from the ranch. They're strangers to Casey, allies he'll have to trust if he wants to survive. Yet already, fans are whispering about possible storylines between Casey and his new team. Belle appears close to him in the teaser. Andrea even shares a resemblance to Monica. Could the writers be daring enough to push Casey into a new romance so soon after Monica's possible death? For many fans, the answer better be no. Casey is a man defined by loyalty and love, and watching him simply move on would break the very heart of his character. But maybe, just maybe, down the line, when the pain has settled and the rage has cooled, sparks might ignite again. For now, the first episode is about loss. Monica's absence will echo through every scene, shaping Casey's decisions and driving the story forward. And her death, if it truly happens, won't just devastate Casey and Tate. It will ripple through every corner of the Yellowstone universe. Thomas Rainwater, who always cared deeply for Monica, will stand at her funeral with Mo Brings Plenty by his side. Their grief will be as raw as Casey's, and their anger just as sharp. They'll want justice, maybe even vengeance, but they'll also know Casey can't handle this alone. That's where the U.S. Marshals come in. Picture this. Thomas looks Casey in the eye and warns him that revenge without allies is a death wish. He tells him to step into a fight bigger than himself, to use the resources of the Marshals to hunt the killers down. That's how Casey finds himself not just as a grieving husband, but as a federal agent, armed, relentless, and unstoppable. His path is no longer about raising cattle or holding onto ranch land. It's about chasing criminals across state lines, facing cartel leaders, and dismantling the darkest forces in America. And yet, as much as this series is about Casey's new life, it's also about Tate. The boy has already been through more trauma than most adults: kidnappings, violence, and the constant shadow of the Dutton family's enemies. Losing his mother might be the wound he never heals from. In YMarshals, Tate may no longer just be a victim. He may become a young man determined to fight back. While Casey joins the Marshals, Tate could be under the care of Thomas Rainwater, a man who will no doubt teach him strength, resilience, and maybe even vengeance. Can you imagine Tate growing up in this war, his future shaped by the loss of his mother? That question alone makes episode 1 one of the most emotionally charged premieres in Yellowstone history. But it doesn't stop there. Fans are desperate to know, will the original Yellowstone cast appear? Beth, Rip, and even other members of the Dutton legacy could return for Monica's funeral. Beth may stand beside her brother, offering the kind of ruthless support only she knows how to give. Rip might even step into the action, though his own spin-off, The Dutton Ranch, suggests his story will largely unfold elsewhere. Still, a cameo isn't impossible. After all, death has always been the one thing that brings this fractured family back together, and that's what makes episode 1 of YMarshals so haunting. It isn't just about Casey's first steps as a U.S. Marshal, it's about the cost of those steps. A man broken by grief, a son on the edge of collapse, and a family that may or may not be there to catch him. This isn't just another Yellowstone spinoff. This is Casey's reckoning. And it all begins with Monica. If Monica's funeral is the emotional breaking point of the premiere, then Casey's first mission as a U.S. Marshal will be the spark that lights the fire. The teaser already shows him in a high-speed chase, 2 cars swerving through the night as Casey barrels after them. On the surface, it looks like a simple pursuit. But what if it's more than that? What if those cars belong to the same men tied to Monica's death? Imagine Casey, still dressed in grief, still carrying the weight of her absence, now finding himself face to face with the very criminals who stole his world away. That would not just be action. That would be destiny. But this isn't the ranch anymore. Casey isn't fighting alone, with only his rifle and his instincts. This time, he's part of a unit, trained, armed, and organized. Belle, Andrea, and Harry Ford will stand beside him, but trust won't come easily. Casey has never been a man of teams. He's a man of loyalty, bound to family and few friends. And yet here he is, in the belly of a federal agency, forced to put his faith in strangers. Will he clash with Belle's determination or Andrea's careful strategy? Will he find himself butting heads with Ford, a seasoned marshal who believes in rules and orders while Casey believes in justice at any cost? Those tensions are what will drive the early episodes, showing us a Casey we've never seen before, one who has to walk the line between duty and vengeance. And what about Belle and Andrea? Already, whispers of romance are circling. Fans can see in the teaser the way Belle stands close to Casey, or the way Andrea's resemblance to Monica makes their connection almost inevitable. But moving on from Monica in the very first episode, that would be a betrayal of everything Casey stands for. He is not a man who forgets love easily. So instead of romance, what we might see is temptation, a spark that burns slowly, lingering on the edges of grief. The writers may tease us, but they know Casey's true strength comes from his loyalty. That's what makes him the man fans root for, the man who always chooses family over desire. Meanwhile, back at the Dutton universe, Tate's story begins to twist. His grief is different from Casey's. It's not quiet, it's not restrained. Tate has always carried the scars of his family's violent history, and Monica's death might be the breaking point. Under the care of Thomas Rainwater and M.O., he'll learn to carry himself with strength. But don't mistake that for healing. Tate is young, reckless, and angry. And if Casey is fighting criminals with the Marshals, Tate might try to fight them in his own way, tracking whispers, chasing leads, even running into danger to prove he's his father's son. The question is, will Tate's pain make him stronger, or will it destroy him before Casey can protect him? And then there's Thomas Rainwater. His role in episode 1 could be far bigger than fans expect. He has always fought for his people, his land, and his future, but Monica's death makes this personal. For the first time, his loyalty won't just be to his community. It will be to Casey and Tate. Rainwater knows that vengeance unchecked is a fire that consumes, and he will try to guide Casey through the storm. But at the same time, he won't hesitate to use his own resources, his own warriors, to strike at Monica's killers. This creates a dangerous parallel. Casey working through the law with the Marshals and Rainwater working outside of it, through his own methods. What happens when both paths collide? What happens when justice and vengeance can no longer be separated? That tension may shape the entire season. And what of the villains? Every great Yellowstone story needs an enemy strong enough to break the Duttons, and why? Marshals promises just that. If Monica's death is no accident, then the killers must be bold, organized, and powerful enough to challenge federal authority. Are we dealing with a cartel, a crime syndicate, or something even more insidious? Political figures, corporations, or corrupt officials who want Casey silenced before he uncovers the truth? Whatever the answer, these aren't enemies who can be beaten with a single gunfight. They are enemies who will stretch their influence across the season, forcing Casey to fight not just with bullets, but with strategy, with sacrifice, and with the knowledge that every move he makes could put Tate in greater danger. Still, through all this chaos, one thing is certain: Casey's journey and why. Marshals isn't just about becoming a federal agent. It's about transformation. From rancher to soldier, from husband to widower, from protector to avenger. Episode 1 will lay the foundation for a man who must choose whether to stay in the shadows of his grief or step into the light of a new purpose. The funeral is the end of one life, but the chase, the mission, that's the beginning of another. And yet, fans will not only be asking what Casey will do, they'll be asking who else might appear. Will Beth and Rip truly be absent, or will they arrive in a moment of loyalty, if only to stand with Casey at Monica's grave? Will John Dutton's legacy cast a shadow over the story, reminding Casey of the family name he still carries? Or will Marshals carve its own path, breaking free from the ranch entirely to explore a darker, grittier world? These are the questions that will keep us glued to the screen, waiting for every reveal, every clue, every heartbeat. Because make no mistake, Episode 1 is not just another chapter. It is the turning point of Casey's life, the moment he ceases to be simply a Dutton and becomes something else entirely, a Marshal forged in fire, carrying grief as his weapon, and stepping into a battle that could either redeem him or destroy him. And it all begins with the death of Monica, the loss that changes everything.